Critical thinking is really to move out of the conventional space of wisdom to get people to ask pretty fundamental questions about how can we make a difference compared with the way we do things today.
Well, critical thinking is absolutely paramount to the aviation industry. It's all about critical analysis, questioning assumptions, weighing up all the alternatives that are out there, putting all the evidence on the table, and then come to an informed sort of decision.
Supply chain management is not about the formulas and facts that you have to know, but it is more about critical analysis. I'll give you two different directions. First of all, there is no unique solution to a supply chain problem. So there is always more than one way or one approach to solve one specific problem, because you have to look at the overall picture, finding out the opportunities and see what are the boundaries, what are the limitations and constraints to your specific problem, and then what are the tools and techniques, the available tools and techniques to solve those problems, and what is the most efficient and effective way of doing it. So basically, critical thinking is an undeniable component of supply chain management.
As a transport sociologist, I associate critical thinking very much with curiosity. You need to be able to ask questions, and transport and infrastructure is always around us every day, and a lot of people don't notice that until things go wrong.
You can't pick up London Transport and plant it in Sydney and expect it to work. You have to critically analyse what it is that makes the London system work and what elements of those could sensibly be transferred to Sydney, say.
Curiosity is important with this critical thinking approach, because if you're just accepting it as given without asking any questions, asking the politicians, why do you think that's appropriate? What does it mean? Even thinking about your own behaviour, like, why am I doing it this way? Do we need more infrastructure? Maybe we actually need to change people's travel behaviour instead. So there's always that push and pull.
I was really struggling with how to benchmark an Australian city against cities that I knew something about, because that's how I would transfer policy from those cities to Australian contexts. And I found, interestingly, that all sorts of things about Australian cities were odd or unique. So in some ways they're very like American cities in terms of low density and being very spread out, but in other contexts, in terms of the amount of employment in the CBD, they're quite similar to European cities. And that means that policy transfer is really very tricky. You need to be able to look at all the characteristics of a policy and work out which it is that's driving the success in the particular area that you're looking at. And that's what I call critical thinking. It's the what if.
Really challenging topic that is related to critical thinking is how we reduce congestion on our roads. As an economist, pricing signals are the most effective way of doing that, yet governments are opposed to that. It's political suicide to ever up prices on the grounds that the community says they're slugged as it is. So let's think outside the box and do the following. Let's scrap fuel excise, let's scrap registration charges and replace them by a distance-based charge in the peak, like 4 cents a kilometre when the traffic's particularly bad, and maybe maintain a component of the registration charge such that the entire cost to the user is less than what it currently is. You have to convince the user that there's a benefit in reform, we call that buy-in, and then we might have a chance of convincing the politicians. But you need a set of instruments that will actually deliver support from those who vote. Road pricing reform is a good example of not trying to finesse the existing instruments, but thinking outside the box with a clear sheet and starting afresh and seeing what you come up with. It can work. In fact, it's only a matter of time before the politicians will listen.